Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode of the how-to series, we're going to cover how to change your front and rear brake lines to swap them over to stainless steel. Now I'm going to do the Spiegler stainless steel lines. There's other options out there like the Goodrich lines. Either one you go with will be a good choice for you to make. I'll show you how to change the front, the rear, and then I'll cover very briefly how to bleed the brake system. I have another video on that. You can click that up here and get to it. If you want to follow me to the bench, I'll show you all the tools that we need to do this and get started. Let's go. First thing you're going to need is a set of pliers. I have a set of needle nose pliers here, but you can use linesman pliers or whatever other plier you have available to you. This will be used to pull off the clip washer that holds the brake line to the hard line. It's a bracket essentially that just kind of keeps it in place. So we'll need a set of pliers to remove that. Next, you'll need some sockets. I have a 10 mil to remove the factory bolt that holds the brake line bracket in place, an 11 millimeter to remove the factory banjo bolt from the calipers, and then a 14 millimeter for the aftermarket banjo bolt on my particular set of Spiegler brake lines. However, if you have a set of Goodrich, I'm not sure what size that is, just double check before you get started. And then I'm also going to use a 1/2 inch 14 millimeter to get that torque down. Speaking of torquing things down, I have a 1/2 inch torque wrench that I will use for the aftermarket banjo bolts to get that back on. I also have a 1/4 inch pound torque wrench with a 1/4 to 3/8 adapter. I will use that along with a crow's foot socket, a 13 mil crow's foot. That will be to tighten up the factory hardline nut, a 3/8 ratcheting wrench to break the bolts loose and get them retightened before we torque them. And then you'll also need a 17 millimeter open end wrench. Now this is for the Spiegler lines to kind of hold them in place and position them. But then you will need a 13 millimeter wrench to remove and loosen the hardline bolt or hardline nut. This one here is a speed wrench. You don't have to have a speed wrench. You can also use a flare nut wrench, but essentially you need a 13 mil. Now on the fronts, there will be a liner that needs to be removed. That uses a T15 socket, a T15 bolt. So use a T15 screwdriver there. And then there is a push pin that needs to be removed. So I have my trusty removal tool. And then there are some clips that hold the speed signal wire to the original brake line, and we're going to remove those. You just need a small flat blade or a pick tool to take care of that. Now, most of the aftermarket stainless steel brake lines come with replacement copper crush washers. However, if you do not have those, or if they seem to lose them, whatever that might be, I will include the part number for the OEM copper crush washers in the description below. You can find all of the links to all the tools that you will need here in the description. So let's go ahead and get started with the rears first. Now that I've shown you the tools that you're going to need, we're going to go ahead and start at the rear of the car, mostly because this one is pretty straightforward and simple, and we'll get it knocked out, done, out of the way, and then we'll move to the front. The first thing that we're going to need to do is loosen the nut that holds the hard line to the rear brake line. That is a 13 mil. We're just going to loosen that up. Before I loosen it all the way, next, what I'm going to do is loosen the banjo bolt that is here at the back of the caliper. So let me give you a better shot of that. So the OEM banjo bolt that is located at the back of the caliper here is an 11 millimeter bolt. So I'm just using an 11 millimeter socket to get that loose. And you'll see that the fluid starts to drip out almost immediately once you start loosening this. So you Want to make sure you get your drip tray ready. And then once you have this off, you'll notice that this kind of sits at a certain angle. So one of the things that you're going to want to do here is when you're putting the new stainless steel brake line back on, you want to make sure that this is the angle that you have going towards the caliper. Otherwise, you can run into an issue where as the suspension travels, it gets loosened up or worse, torn or broken. So we'll get back to loosening the hardline nut next. Now that we have the line completely disconnected at the banjo bolt from the back of the caliper, I'm going to finish loosening up the 13 mil hardline nut here. And then once this is loose, I'll go ahead and grab the pliers and I will pull this locking washer out. Just get a good solid grip on it, and then I'll use the leverage with my other hand to just pull straight out. Set that aside. We will reuse that. And now we're just a matter of pulling this straight down. Now, I have a lot of like debris and dirt on this bracket that holds the line on, so I'm going to go ahead and wipe that down and clean it off before I put the new stainless steel line on. Now that I've got that cleaned off, I'm going to go ahead and take the new stainless steel line. I'm going to slide that into the bracket and then put the locking washer back in. And then once I have that locked in, I'm going to use my 17 millimeter wrench to make sure that the angle that I needed to the back of the caliper is correct. And currently it's not. So if I put this in the correct orientation, you see I get this twist going here, and I don't want that. So before I start tightening this hardline nut, I'm just going to rotate this around so that is at a relaxed position on where I need it to be. Just like that. Now I can start reconnecting the hard line. But this time I will need to hold the bottom nut in place while I tighten this on, so that it doesn't keep spinning on me. And I'm just going to get that on there snug. I will torque that down, but not until I get the banjo bolt and the line reconnected to the caliper. Now, to get the banjo bolt in, this is incredibly important. With the banjo bolt, you have the bolt, and then you need to put a copper crush washer on. Then put it through the brake line, which I realize you probably can't see from this angle, and then put another copper washer on that. This is what's needed to make sure you don't have any leaks. And then hand tighten the banjo bolt into the back of the caliper, or rather start it by hand. And now on these aftermarket Spiegler lines, I need a 14 millimeter socket to tighten that up. Once I have that snug, I'll switch over to my torque wrench, and we want to torque the banjo bolt to 30 foot-pounds. Now that the banjo bolt has been torqued down to 30 foot-pounds, we're going to move to the hardline nut, and that is torqued to 13 foot-pounds or 156 inch-pounds. So I've got my 13 mil crow's foot, and I'm going to start tightening that while holding the bottom portion with my 17 mil. And there you go. The rear is all set. Let's move to the front. Here we are at the front, and the front is a little bit different than the rear because there is a liner that has to come off so that we can get access to the hardline nut, which is right back here. And in order to do that, we need our T15, whether that's a handheld T15 screwdriver or T15 socket, that's up to you. But we're going to go ahead and remove those 5. And then there is one push pin down at the bottom here that you can't see quite on camera. Let's see if I can angle you here. There it is, right there. So we'll get those loose, and then we'll have our access to our hard line. I'm going to go ahead and rotate the caliper so that I have better access to the banjo bolt and the hard line and that push pin. Once I have the liner loose, you can get it out by sliding it towards the rear of the car. Now, one of the things that we want to do here, and I'll mention it again at the end, is that until we bleed the brakes, we don't want to put this liner back on. And the reason is that we want to make sure that we can see if there's any leaks coming from this hard line nut or not. Now, here on the front, there is the vehicle speed sensor or the wheel speed sensor that is clipped to the factory OEM brake line. We just need to use a small flathead or a pick tool to loosen the clamps that hold this onto the brake line. And then you can pop that off. There's 2 of those. Those are going to reattach to the aftermarket brake line. And then there is a 10 millimeter bolt that holds the brake line in place, since there's a whole lot more movement at the front suspension than there is the rear, especially with rotation left and right of the tires. So we're going to take that off and then work on loosening the banjo bolt and the hard line nut, and I'll move the camera angle for those 2. All right, now that we have the bracket bolt loosened, we can focus on the banjo bolt down here and then the hard line nut right here. So we'll grab a 11 millimeter socket, get that on the banjo bolt. We'll break that loose. And that will start leaking again almost immediately. Be sure to wipe your hands clean after you're done loosening this. Brake fluid is extremely corrosive to paint, and if you get it on your calipers and leave it there long enough, it can eat away the paint or change the color. Some of you are familiar with these red calipers turning brown, and that is usually because there's fluid that leaks out onto them and gets hot. Next, we're going to loosen up the hardline nut here. Again, this is a 13 mil, so I'll get my 13 mil wrench on that, start loosening that, and then we can pull the clip washer and put the new line in. Now that we have the old line out, we're going to take the new stainless steel line. We're going to route it through the same way that we took the old one out. And then place the clip washer back in. Before we start tightening things, I'm going to make sure that this is routed properly and that the banjo bolt is placed in correctly. So placed in the line correctly, not incorrectly placed. So we've got the banjo bolt and then a crush washer. I'm going to get this to focus here. There we go. All right. So what we want to do here is you've got the banjo bolt and then you want a copper crush washer, and you're going to place that through the stainless line, and then the other copper washer goes on the other side of your brake line. We're going to start that by hand, make sure we're not cross-threading anything, and that it is clear of any obstruction. And then what we can do is reconnect the 10 millimeter bracket bolt, this thing over here. I'll show you that on the other angle. All right, so now on the other end, this other view here, we've got the stainless line here. The bracket is going to sit down on this, and we are going to put the 10 millimeter bolt back in and tighten that to 96 inch-pounds. Now that that's complete, we just need to reclip the speed sensor wire to the new stainless steel brake line. And then we can tighten down the banjo bolt and the hardline nut to their respective torque specs. We are in the home stretch. We just need to tighten the hardline nut here all the way, and then tighten the banjo bolt. This is 30 foot-pounds, and then the hardline nut is going to be 13 foot-pounds or 156 inch-pounds. Now that we've tightened and torqued down the hardline nut, we can focus on the banjo bolt here and getting that set to 30 foot-pounds. And now we're done. Next, to flush the brake. We finally finished the brake lines, we finished the front, and we finished the rear, but we're not done yet. We still need to replace the front liner, but we're not going to do that until we bleed the brakes and make sure that the fitting at the front isn't leaking before we cover that piece back up. And of course, we need to flush the brake fluid system to make sure that there are no air in the system at all. Air in the system is bad. We want to make sure we get that out. And if you want to know how to do that, I've already done that in a video previously, and that'll be up here. You can click on it right now. Till next time, till the next project, see you then.